Hi everyone, welcome to today's kitchen session. Just giving it a moment whilst the live settles down. So thank you very much for taking part today in this kitchen session as part of the University of Chester's lecture sessions. My name is Dr. Maeve Marmion and my subject area is International Tourism Management and the Experience Economy. And I'm going to talk to you today about some of the challenges facing tourism in 2020 and some of the things that we need to think about going forward into the first stages of potential recovery for tourism experiences. I'm going to talk to you for about 20 minutes, that's the aim, and there's a chat window, so if you have any questions that you want to ask as you go along, please do feel free and welcome to ask questions, and then towards the end I will use those questions to hopefully have a little bit of a discussion with you and a bit of interaction. So that's the goal. So the main points I want to talk to you about today, whilst tourism is at the forefront of many of our minds, is the benefits of tourism that many of us feel and some of the reasons why we travel and why experiences matter to us so much. And some of the challenges and trends we've seen recently in the run-up towards 2020 and some of the challenges that we're likely to see going forward as well. And one of the things I'd like to also touch on is around technology and innovation and thinking about the ways that maybe being creative could help us respond to the COVID crises and trying to think about the way that businesses and destinations can start to rebuild some of their activities as we move forward. So I thought it would be a useful starting point for us to stop and think about why tourism and travel experiences in particular are meaningful and why we're so passionate about them. So many people, whether you're interested in studying tourism, whether you're a business owner, or perhaps you're just somebody who likes to travel and someone who places quite a lot of importance on the ability to have a holiday. I think there's lots of benefits that come from those opportunities, but we rarely stop and properly think about why we do those things. And perhaps during lockdown, it's a really good opportunity to stop and think about those things. When we are not able to travel, we're restricted in the opportunities that we have. Our experiences are much more limited. And perhaps you've already started to get that itchy feet feeling or saying to your friends or loved ones that you need or miss the opportunity to have a holiday. And there's a lot of research out there that suggests that tourism and travel experiences are actually very good for our individual well-being and health. There's a lot of research that suggests that having a holiday can boost our happiness, help us relax, help us escape. Maybe there's even some benefits in terms of recuperation. If you've had a very stressful life event or if you're very stressed generally, having a holiday and time away can give us a real sense of recuperation and recovery. And there's also research out there that suggests that sharing a holiday with loved ones helps us reconnect. Maybe we travel on our own to build our confidence and gain a sense of freedom. So there's a whole host of different ways in which holidays and travel and tourism can be really beneficial for us. And having that break away and certainly time off for those in employment, sometimes that can even boost our productivity and mean that our work-life balance is better as a result of having had that break. So all in all, those types of thinking help us realise that tourism and travel experiences are not just fun in the moment, but are actually beneficial for our quality of life and something that no doubt many of us are missing around the world right now as we're much more restricted in our movements and in our activities. The UN Declaration of Human Rights even mentions the right and the need for people to have rest and leisure, and that people in employment benefit from having paid opportunities to take time off. So that even indicates that at a basic level, having experiences away from our day-to-day stresses are helpful for our well-being and help us improve the way that we spend our time. Some of you might be even thinking, I really need a holiday now, I'm missing that opportunity. And some research has started to suggest that your DNA could be part of that. So you might have what's affectionately known now as the wanderlust gene, the gene that makes you really have a high appetite for adventure and maybe wanting to have more experiences. Maybe you thrive on new cultures, new food, taking adventure. You might even be more inclined to take risks. And it might be in our chemical composition that some of us are more risk adverse than others. And that's interesting, I think, when you start to think about tourism and the decisions that we make. Whether or not your DNA gives you that itchy feet phenomenon or not, I think there's a lot of merit in the idea that tourism is beneficial for us. And certainly many people choose to spend quite a proportion of their disposable income on these tourism and wider experiences. From a sustainable tourism perspective, it's also really helpful to stop and think about the people who are excluded from that. So there's many people around the world and even in our own local economies that would be excluded from having that opportunity to benefit from tourism experiences. Maybe they're living in poverty, they're socially displaced, perhaps they do earn, but they don't earn enough to have these more maybe richer experiences. And it's always helpful to think about those members of the community as well, because they're not gaining the benefits that perhaps those of us who are privileged enough to have these experiences are. However, regardless of where you are within that picture, many people have started to see holidays and tourism as a real need, something that's part of their basic expenditure, the way they spend their time, the way they prioritise their money. And that's been interesting because, 30, 40 years ago, it was a real luxury to have something that perhaps we now see as quite normal day-to-day activity. And for many people, the point at which they start to plan their holidays is when they're on their holidays, or maybe they have several holidays booked at any given time because there's a real appetite for those experiences. And if that's the case, there's a real rise in demand for tourism and travel experiences, and that has been increasing steadily over the past period of time. And certainly those with the means and desire to travel has been increasing. And if you think about that from a sustainability perspective, that rises and raises challenges for destinations too. And in the run up to the end of 2019, we were seeing trends in certain destinations. Some very popular destinations were struggling to manage their demand effectively and to sustainably plan their activities. And in some destinations, their carrying capacities, the number of people they could comfortably manage within a destination, has been breached. And that rises all sorts of different tensions between guests and hosts within places as well. And in the run-up, in the last few years, we've had anti-tourist sentiment in destinations and even hashtags like tourists go home and graffiti in destinations where people are frustrated with the impact that tourism was having. Whilst all of that's been happening in some destinations, other destinations struggle to compete. It's a very busy, international, crowded marketplace, and some destinations miss out, whilst other destinations struggle to manage. And that's interesting too. Certainly our home destinations, our local destinations, struggle to compete when people can travel abroad and overseas much more easily as well. All of that kind of brings us up to current time, and now we've got this pandemic, we've got COVID-19, and we're in the midst of thinking about this as a crisis. And certainly for tourism and the experience economy, it raises several challenges that are real challenges to look at and explore. And we have new hashtags. A hashtag that we've all been using of late is the hashtag stay home. And many of you will be watching this from your own respective houses and homes. And the hashtag travel tomorrow, this idea of evoking the passion that we might have for travel, but not being able to do that yet. And all around the world, we're seeing flights grounded and cruise and ferry ships in their ports, paid attractions closed, beauty spots, beaches cordoned off. So we've got a whole different set of challenges now that are very different to what we've seen up until the beginning of this year. And that creates a whole new set of expectations. Many of us are resetting our plans. Perhaps we're looking to get refunds, change what we would have intended to do for our travel experiences. and very much uncertain about when that will start to happen again. And that will happen again in different places at different times for different people. For other people, job uncertainty and financial concerns may be at the forefront of their thinking. And for business owners, particularly, and for destination managers, the idea of the economy and the uncertainty and how to plan the first steps of recovery are becoming very important as well. And taking a step again from that sustainability perspective and thinking about the global sustainability goals, we've also got a whole host of people that we would define as tourism stakeholders all around the world who are even more affected by this lockdown than perhaps we are as individual tourists and businesses, because they're relying on the income or have lost their livelihoods as destinations see, far fewer or no tourists in those places. So people living in very kind of difficult times around the world as they wait for destinations and tourists to start moving again. So as we start to move towards the end of the crisis period of the COVID-19 epidemic, we're looking at how we start to move towards the post-COVID-19 thinking. And it's interesting to see that what we might have once defined as a real need to have a tourism experience or to travel is actually now going to be perceived as a much more risky decision-making for a lot of people. So some of you listening today might be thinking, I can't wait, I miss my opportunities to travel. I'll be the first one on a plane when those flights are going again, or I can't wait to book my next holiday. And for each of those people who are thinking that way, there'll be other people thinking quite differently, holding back, waiting to see what happens, maybe being a little hesitant. And that's interesting too, and creates a challenge for tourism managers and destinations as well. So attitudes are changing, behaviours are changing, perceptions of risk, perhaps that we've never thought about before, or with very limited amount of risk for much of us when we planned our leisure and tourism experiences. Our perceptions and our desires for what we perceive to be safer choices might be a big trend in the near future. And no doubt that will be different for all hosts of different people, different market segments, different tourist types. It might even change depending on who we travel with or where we're going or what the purpose of those trips are, depending on what we are kind of prioritising as we move back into recovery. I think there'll be a real move towards more purposeful experiences, ones that help us connect with the people that perhaps we've missed, or reconnect with ourselves and get that sense of escape again that perhaps some people are missing. And there might be a trend or a necessity for our experiences to be much more homebound, more local, more regional, perhaps national tourism settings. And that might be through choice, but also through national and international governments in kind of enforcing that as well. So Tourism 2020, I think, is going to have a real surge of domestic tourism, and that does give challenges, but also is an opportunity for places and destinations to think differently about who their audiences or visitors might be. And it'll give opportunity to reconnect with new types of customers, and getting that right and understanding those customers and giving them real good experiences, positive experiences, might actually help reignite new types of customer bases and new responsibilities with customers that perhaps we've lost out to in the past because they might have gone further afield for their experiences. So there'll be a real push to relearn our customers, who they are, where they're coming from, and what they're looking for as well. So all sectors of the experience economy have been affected by COVID-19, whether that's tourism, hospitality, events, culture, leisure, retail, and certainly the managers of the destinations and the businesses, the workers, the visitors, the residents, they've all been affected in different ways by this shutdown, and the experiences that we all love to have are on hold. And it's been interesting to see how governments and local and regional councils have responded to this challenge. For example, as lockdown has started to ease, we've had governments, for example, here in the UK, say, perhaps think about going to natural beauty spots, get out into the fresh air again, enjoy the outdoors. but that's difficult for devolved nations. It's difficult for local councils, local tourism management organisations who perhaps not set up yet to respond to that new demand, and they're trying to prioritise the residents and the people and the resources within their local areas too. So there's a whole host of challenges that we need to be set up for as tourism and the experience economy starts to lift again and starts to happen more. We've even seen here in the UK, devolved nations and local tourism bodies having to actively discourage tourism. So you might have seen in your local regions, please don't visit yet, we're not set up yet. We will be open soon, but give us time. And national tourism campaigns have worked around that idea too. So, for example, in Scotland, they're using the idea of absence makes the heart grow fonder, this idea of evoking passion for visiting, but holding back and encouraging you to wait, which is a difficult position to be in when predominantly so much of your economy and the local jobs and the people who live there benefit from tourism in a real meaningful way. So why all change, please? Why not just back to business as usual as soon as possible? Well, I think it's realistic to say that tourism is changing and that we as tourists are probably changing as well. And it's important to think about what destinations and businesses can do to respond to that change and maybe be set up as well as possible to benefit from those changes. So I was reflecting on this and thinking about the ways in which businesses and destinations can demonstrate that they share the same values as their visitors and for their customers. For example, you in your local areas might have seen businesses that have had to close, maybe responding to local needs in the community or working with charitable sectors or providing meals. Certainly here in Chester, we've had a local trend of restaurant owners cooking meals for our homeless community who've been in temporary accommodation as part of the Everybody In campaign, and they've risen to that challenge and been helping to feed those members of the community. And that's seen buy-in from local people who their brands are in the forefront of their mind, and maybe when they step out and think about where they want to go, they'll remember those businesses that meant something to them while they were in lockdown. So sharing values, being part of a community, and connecting with people on a more personal level, I think would be a really good starting point for businesses. And also being creative in the way that you engage with your audiences. So for international tourism and certainly for tourism attractions, we've seen a huge rise in creative offers and experiences, completely different to what we would have seen this time last year. So things like live stream performances from opera houses and theatres, or virtual museum tours where you can go and see the Mona Lisa without the crowds, without those pesky tourists getting in your way, giving you that real opportunity to experience something that perhaps you wouldn't have been able to do or you wouldn't have thought about doing before. Here again in Chester, on our doorstep, we've had Chester Zoo doing virtual days out, and that's been a creative way to keep audiences interested and maybe even helping the homeschoolers, because children have been able to see the new arrivals, learn about endangered species, and just have a bit of fun. And I think those kinds of creative ways of engaging audiences has been very helpful and very clever way of keeping people's interest going without overtly marketing or bringing people to you. And that has been interesting to see. And it might be a case that businesses that have gone out of their way to help people keep them entertained during lockdown are the kinds of businesses that we remember and spend time with as we move out of lockdown, which is obviously something we're keen to do. I was watching the news this weekend and I saw the story, many of you probably did as well, about the Amsterdam restaurants who've been using the greenhouses on the canal front, and guests have been eating within these greenhouses. And I thought that was very clever because it creates a bit of a cocoon around different groups of guests and eases people back into this sense of being outside and seeing the world go by, but gives them that extra confidence, that extra sense of security that I think we'll all be very interested in as we kind of move out of the lockdown phase of this crisis. And there's lots of opportunities, I think, to be more creative, to use technology in a way that will help our businesses. So, for example, in Hong Kong, they've been trialling in the airports full body disinfectant pods. If I'd said those words to you this time last year, you would have said, absolutely, that won't take off. But if you think about it, 10 years ago, full body scanners felt very alien to many tourists, and now it's become part of the norm. So thinking about technology in a different way has certainly started to happen. And as consumers are already more used to automated services, contactless payments, online bookings, maybe even unmanned receptions or virtual manned receptions have been starting to happen, and virtual and augmented reality has started to enhance experiences in creative ways. And that's been a trend that's been growing over the past kind of 5 or 6 years, but now we have this real opportunity where people are embracing technology in a new way, and perhaps that will break down those adoption barriers, and people will be more able to engage with more innovative experiences going forward. And that creates an opportunity, certainly, for businesses to think about what might work for them. Hybrid experiences might work quite well. We had here in Chester again a Pokemon Go event, which was hugely popular not that long ago, and that was interesting because we had this real idea of people seeing a beautiful historic cultural destination, but also using an augmented game to interact in 2 different ways with the same space, and those kinds of things will likely be increasingly popular going ahead. I think I'll give a shout out at that point to my colleagues who are very passionate about user-centered design and ensuring that experiences are enhanced through technology, not undermined or detracted from in any way. So golden rules to think about going forward. I believe it's going to be really important for tourism businesses and destinations, any businesses really, to make their customers feel very valued and to make them feel appreciated within their offering. They've come out of their way to come and engage with your business. So make sure that they understand that they're recognised for that. And just as importantly, make your staff feel valued and safe within their environment. In the experience economy, it's so important that the staff feel happy and engage with what's happening, because they're actually creating and co-creating the experience for your guests in real time. So that needs to be a genuine interaction where everybody feels like it's a positive environment to be in. And increasing confidence is going to be very important. So we've seen a trend now in showing more back of house operational elements of businesses to customers. So giving them an insight to how you're enhancing your operations, enhancing cleanliness standards, what you're doing to help create social distancing opportunities, explaining that to potential visitors and helping them understand that before they arrive, takes out that little bit of anxiety and helps them know what's expected of them and their role too. And I think that trend is going to be an increasing one as we all move towards the next phases and start to venture out a little bit more and start to be more confident with what we want to do with our leisure time and our holiday experiences. So I think it's important to remember that people are quite tentative, but that we still love tourism, and that many people, it's very important to them to have this break and these experiences that enrich their lives. So anything we can do to reduce the risk and increase confidence will be important for people going forward. And I think it's my final point, because I'm watching the clock, and as ever, I've got quite into my topic. I think it's important for people studying and researching tourism to be revisiting these principles around risk, perception of risk, decision making. How do we market and communicate to audiences? How do we understand what people want from our businesses, and how do we meet those needs in creative ways? And understanding, the various strategies that we can use as destination managers, businesses, and as educators as well. So that's all from me. I'm hoping that some people are going to be brave enough now to ask some questions, and I'll certainly give my best at answering those questions. So I can see a wave from Austin, hello, and Melanie is asking, going forward, do you see an increase in connecting with local heritage within tourism? I think yes. For me, heritage tourism is one of my background areas. I'm really interested in that. And I think as we've all been in lockdown, there's been a real chance to see and learn again from our local environment. I was walking around recently and looking at some of the buildings and reminding myself of their stories and why they're important. And I think as people look to the experience economy more locally, heritage sites, cultural attractions will become important spaces because they help us learn and connect, and also they're such vibrant parts of our visitor economy. So they're well set up to give good experiences. So I would say yes, hopefully, because of course those destinations, particularly the historic and culturally significant sites, they really rely on the money that visitors bring and the investment that often goes into conserving and protecting those sites. So it would be a really great step forward if those sites were prioritised and people looked to support them, certainly in the first instance, but also going forward, looking to our local heritage as something that we feel part of as well would be great. So Annabelle is asking, realistically, would you expect caravan sites to open instead of hotels? That's an interesting one. If you saw one of the government briefings one day last week, they asked that question. I don't know if you caught that, and they hadn't thought it through. They hadn't decided what their answer would be. So they said they would go away and have a think about it. I think possibly would be my answer. And I think every business needs to think about safety, and they need to think about their staff, and they need to think about the confidence that people would have. So I think caravans have the benefit of enclosed spaces that people are in control of themselves. You don't have to offer as much space that you are responsible for as a service provider. And people are a little bit like what I said about the greenhouses. They're cocooned and safe and kind of already separated in a way that perhaps you wouldn't be in a more traditional accommodation setting. So I think the fact that they're outdoors and quite often they have space might see some of those challenges that built destinations find it more difficult to overcome. So I wouldn't like to go on record and say absolutely yes, but I think the challenges for these outdoor natural spaces and maybe caravan sites and those kinds of places, they have an opportunity, I think, for their audiences, and that will be interesting to see. Are there any other questions, or anybody wants to go back to anything I've talked about or ask something that I haven't yet asked? I'm open to anything, so please do feel very welcome to ask questions should you wish. You're welcome. Thank you. I wasn't sure what questions I would be asked. It's very hard to predict. So it could be about what's it like to study tourism, or what is it like, or what kinds of experiences might you guys be interested in yourselves? Because one of the best things about tourism as a subject area is that, whether you've studied it before or not, we've all been tourists before, and we've all been passionate about experiences, and that's a really good starting point in terms of becoming interested in learning about tourism. I often get young people at open days and applicant days saying, the reason I want to talk about the reason I'm thinking of studying tourism is because it's something I love myself personally. And I think that's a great starting point, isn't it? We all love different things, but if you're passionate about tourism, there's something, perhaps it is your DNA, maybe you do have that wanderlust gene. Okay, Austin, any plans for postgraduate in tourism in Chester in the future? Certainly conversations and plans. We are interested in having a really vibrant postgraduate offer. So if that's something you're interested in, then definitely get in touch and talk to us about that. It's certainly something that could be on the cards. We want to make sure that you're getting good experiences and good educational offer. So, I myself was lucky enough to do postgraduate research in tourism and was really enjoyed that aspect of my own academic development. So if that's something you're interested in, and we'd love to hear from you. So perhaps email me separately and we can have conversations about how to do that. So I see a comment from Jules, lots of marketing opportunities amongst the challenges. Yeah, absolutely. So I gave my marketing colleagues a bit of a shout out there. I think I'm glad you spotted that, in the sense that understanding customers, understanding how to brand businesses, how to connect with values, how to create something that people would respond to. They're really good marketing communication challenges. And I think, research and businesses working together across those specialisms is always something that's a really good idea, and I know that there's a lot of passion around experiential marketing, services marketing, destination marketing to get that right. I bet there's some of you sat at home who will have seen destinations and their campaigns over the last 6 months or 4 months that have really spoken to you. You know, I really liked the Greek strategy where they've just said until then. How evocative is that? And it really made me think, gosh, I've not been to Greece for a long time. Until then, it really sparked my interest, and I'm sure you will have all had ideas and examples of what businesses and destinations have been doing to keep communicating with their customers as this lockdown has been in place. So Izzy, on the crisis, do you think that it's more likely that there will be a boom in the tourism industry, or do you think the industry may struggle for a while yet due to fear? Yeah, I think that question's a really good question, and certainly at the forefront of destination managers and business owners and academics. I think there'll be quite a mix, and domestic tourism, I think, will recover quicker, as we already have seen in our own local areas. As different lockdowns have lifted in different regions and different countries, people have been engaging with their own local surroundings, their own natural beauty spots. And I think those businesses will probably see an increase in local people. International travel then will obviously have the recovery will be affected by things like international travel regulations, different border controls, different restrictions. So there will be a little bit more time, I think, for the international tourism industry to recover to the extent that it was at before. But it also gives us opportunities to think about it in a more sustainable way as well. So I think there will be a boom, but it'll be much more around bespoke, personalised experiences that people feel safe and connected to, that are meaningful for them and for their families or for their loved ones. So I think it's going to be a very interesting period of time, certainly from a management perspective and teaching about tourism. These are the kinds of things that are really interesting to get your teeth into, because there's an element of psychology there, there's an element of consumer behaviour, there's an element of demand, but also how supply going to cope and respond to those challenges. And that's why I think very much around, you know, businesses that we feel connected to, that we trust, that we think are going above and beyond to offer something meaningful that we as consumers buy into. That is where I think the growth opportunity is. Businesses that don't communicate effectively, don't display a response to this crisis in a kind of clear way, I think we'll hold back from them. In the past, we've seen things like flight shaming. That was a real trend of the last couple of years, where people went to social media and talked about flight shaming. You might have heard that phrase. I think we'll see a trend in people shaming businesses that they don't think are doing a good job in terms of hygiene or cleanliness or distancing. And I think what businesses need to do to try and ensure that they don't fall foul of that is to be really upfront and really transparent and really communicative about all of the clever things they're doing to make their business work for their staff and for their customers. That would be my advice to any destinations or businesses. And certainly one of my passions in terms of teaching is around customer service management and experience design. I think working with your customers and co-creating experiences and using technology in a way that enhances it rather than detracts, I think that's where the future, it needs to take us. And because we've all been at home, you might have even seen in your own families and in your own networks, people are more interested in engaging and understanding technology and understanding what businesses are doing. And there's a real opportunity there to connect the two up and hopefully see some innovative responses to this crisis. And just to add an extra thing to Izzy's question there, I suppose you'll know yourself as well, like reflect about your own behaviours. Are you the kind of person that can't wait to go away and travel and to have experiences? Or are you holding back and being tentative? Because I believe there's two different sides to that coin. And that is an indication to us, even on a personal level, that there will be challenges for businesses to tap into our desire, all those amazing things I talked about at the beginning about our sense of escape, our freedom, our relationships, you know, our recuperation. Those things that are still going to be hugely important to us, if not even more important to us. how do businesses connect with that desire, that underlying love of travel and experiences. And maybe going back to the question from Melanie around the heritage attractions, I also think there'll be a real demand for localized cultural experiences and other types of experiences here in and around your own environment. If everybody stays local but we still have those experiences, then the industry will recover, but we'll just see different types of customers and different types of challenges around meeting their needs. That would be my thought. So Austin is saying a little bit apprehensive, but would love to go on a holiday, mix of both. I think that captures what most people are feeling. I would agree with that as well. I think I'm probably personally one of those ones that's inclined to hang back sometimes, be a little bit less adventurous. But I know lots of my friends and family who are the opposite, and they really are looking forward to the first moment that there's flights available to book or hotels that are open to book into. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's our inner psyche talking to us and responding on a personal level to this challenge. And we've seen that with even, in and around wherever you are in the world, and how the lockdown has started to lift tentatively in different places. People have responded in different ways. So we saw images, weeks ago now in China when their lockdown started to lift, of heritage attractions being packed, maybe worryingly so, and people not being able to socially distance because these popular destinations were so busy. That goes back to that management challenge of getting your carrying capacities right and thinking about how you get the level of impact right in a given place. And I think, as tourism managers and people passionate about the industry, these are really good things to try and think about and talk about and share ideas about. So is there anybody else who'd like to ask a question? We do have an open day coming up, so if there's any students in watching this stream, then certainly in a couple of weeks' time we have a virtual open day. That will be a new experience for us, but we'd be very welcome to take part and hear a little bit more about the programme and what it's like to study tourism here. I thought I would use this opportunity to talk more broadly about how cool the tourism industry is and how interesting it is to learn about. But if you want to drill down into things like, what programmes look like, what modules you might do, then please do reach out and come and take part in that as well. And that's the bulk of the questions, I think. Please do feel welcome to ask a question. Don't be shy. I know it can feel a little bit strange asking questions in a chat zone, but I will do my best to answer them. For any students, if you're listening and you're a prospective student, perhaps I could take this opportunity to give a shout out to people like the Tourism Management Institute here in the UK. We're very proud to be an accredited programme by the TMI. We hosted their annual conference here in the autumn at the University of Chester, and an accredited programme gives you that extra level of confidence about what we're teaching and how passionate we are about our subject area. So that's something that you might like to know as well. So there are still some people watching. I don't want to use up your energies past the point of interest, but please do feel free and invited to ask questions. I'm here to answer them. But certainly I could talk about tourism all day. So if you don't ask me questions, I'm at risk of going off and telling you all the things that I think are interesting about this current situation. So as I say, we've got an open day on the 8th of June, I believe. I hope I haven't got that date wrong, and somebody will correct me, no doubt, if I do. It's a Saturday, so it's definitely not the 8th of June, possibly the 6th of June. So I will get that information out to anybody who wants it, and you're cordially invited to take part in our very first virtual open day. Okay. Any final questions? Anyone feeling brave? I've enjoyed the questions I was asked so far, so I do appreciate that. Thanks, Jules. It's I can see now that we're coming towards the end of the session, but do please feel free to contact me. If you go on the University of Chester website, you can find my profile and you can find the tourism programme. I'm going to type my email address for anyone who'd like to get in touch. And it's really easy, just pop me an email and I'll respond to you as soon as possible. Maybe mention that you listened in today so I know where you're coming from or what the basis of your question is. Okay, so I think I will end the session there unless there's any final shout outs, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me today talking about my favourite subject, and please do feel invited to get in touch at any point in the future should you wish to. Thank you very much.